Is citizen comment, and let me point out that we're at this point on the agenda asking for any citizen comment not related to the public hearing. We're holding a public hearing tonight on revisions to the comprehensive plan, and after we do this citizen comment and a couple other agenda items, we'll get to that. So if you have comments on the revisions to the comprehensive plan, this is not the time to step forward. But if you have comments on anything else, you are welcome to step forward. So any citizens seeking to render comment or ask a question? Yeah, please.
Will this be the only citizen comment before it goes to the council?
Citizen comment on the revised comprehensive plan amendments? The public hearing will be the only chance to render comment before it goes to the council.
And this is the public hearing?
Tonight is the public hearing, but it's not right now on the agenda. We're doing anything but the public hearing comments on the revised comp plan. Right. You know, you make a good point. We're going to have another planning commission meeting, but not another public hearing. So at that next planning commission meeting, I think it's May 5th, where we'll talk more about what people said tonight and finalize our recommendations to the City Council. At that meeting, there will be a citizen comment opportunity, as there is with every planning commission meeting. So that's a good point. Thanks. So again, if anybody wants to render citizen comment not related to revisions to the comp plan, please step forward and you shall be heard. Elizabeth, step on up, state your name, state your address, keep your comments to 3 minutes, and feel free. Right there. That's where the mic is on.
Elizabeth Mooney, 5934 Northeast 201st Street, Kenmore. I have not been to any of the planning commissions. I'm happy to see some familiar faces from having served especially on the Citizens Advisory Board for the Shoreline Master Plan. I am coming tonight with a couple of friends, and I fully admit that I don't know everything that you have done so far. I've been nannying my grandson in Utah. I did happen to send off an email to Commissioner Zrebnik about offering up my house for, I didn't hear back, but I was offering some Sammamish River opportunities in case I could be a part of that. I do feel that our family is a steward of the environment because we do have that land on the river, and I've been noticing all of the exciting dragon boats and the mayor's wife. I would like to bring up, however, the toxins that are in our city to both the air and the water. And on a very general policy level, I do not know whether the Planning Commission has looked back at what we talked about, Commissioner Nugent, back in the Shoreline Master Plan when Maura O'Brien came to a meeting and we talked about the potential for the toxins that were on the shoreline. I don't know if you cover anything broadly, but I have concerns since we're doing such an important thing by updating the comprehensive plan, so it's going to set policy for our future health. I also would like to call your attention to the asphalt fumes that are bombarding our north end. Some of the friends that are here tonight who get hit with the asphalt fumes, we met with the CMEX people way back. I don't know what's happening with that, but I have deep concerns if we're giving perks to the polluters without making sure that first our state is going to find the source of the dioxins that are in Lake Washington. That I'd be real curious to know whether that's being divulged to the kids that are in the kayaks on the river and their parents. And I don't have any idea whether there's any news to you about whether the deputy that Puget Sound Clean Air had given the job to Greg, whether the citizens who get hit with the asphalt fumes are able to now report to the city. So bottom line is our future is, compared to 5 years ago, looking worse in the air, and I'm wondering what you all plan
Thanks, Elizabeth. All right, if anybody else would like to render citizen comment not related to the proposed revisions to the comp plan, please step forward. State your name, your address, and limit your comments to 3 minutes.
Patrick O'Brien, 6330 Northeast 181st Street. Yes, right now we've got signs up that say you can't eat more than one fish a month, and yet we're encouraging waterfront use by youth, adults, whoever wants to go down there. So something's wrong with the message. One end of the message train is not talking to another. You do have environmental problems there, and the latest word is that they're not going to dredge, but they're going to continue to run those barges and the large red and white tugs after dark and continue to run aground and do it at dark so we can't see it or take pictures of it. But we know that there's both turbidity and dioxins in the water. That's just the facts. So if we continue to allow them to run barges and large tugs aground and hope to get a navigation channel and berthing area that way, I see that as highly illegal, and I think you folks have something to say about that. There's also letters that we've seen from King County saying that we're all enthused about putting a high-speed ferry link between Kenmore and someplace in Seattle, but we know the wakes that those create and all the expensive properties around Lake Washington are not going to tolerate a catamaran or any high-speed ferry making a wake several times a day. That's just craziness. We know that won't happen. That's not a transit system that'll even pay for itself. So what would be the reason to have that notification from King County that we're all on board with that? Well, that's just more county support of dredging. And the dredging has one purpose, and that's to keep the industrial zone there through 2025 and do support work for any ancillary 520 bridge for the light rail or the deep bore tunnel or any other state, Washington State Department of Transportation project. And it's up to you folks to set the policy that Kenmore will never be a gem that it could be, as long as we have heavy industry, as long as we have a 1962 asphalt plant belching out some really bad fumes. Now it's going to come all the way down to our new senior center area. Today it was very bad halfway down the hill where it was, I mean, you would hold your mouth and wait to draw your next breath somewhere. But nothing's being done. But the rule is, hey, we can't put monitoring on the offending asphalt plant. We can't put monitoring on any of this stuff. The mayor said that anyway. And the reality is that once they've been cited, you can do that. And why isn't there monitoring right on that vat telling us what's coming out of that vat at what temperature and and then we can guess what the impact is to the community. Thanks,
Patrick. Okay. Does anybody else want to render comment tonight? Not related to the revised comprehensive plan. All right, no one stepping forward. We've satisfied that element of the agenda. Thanks, Elizabeth. Thanks, Patrick. Let me point out that our job as a planning commission, our schedule, our agenda, our responsibility is limited to what the city council delegates to us. So for now, it's making revisions to the comp plan. And unfortunately, the things that you've talked about, which are legit concerns, are not on our agenda, so we can't do much about that. But those are comments I think that would be legitimate for the City Council. If you want to step forward, I know you've done that before, and you might want to do that again. The other thing I want to point out is the Commission, I should say, recommended to the Council changes to the RB zone. That's the business zone that runs through 522. We did it last year. And among those revisions to that zoning was to prohibit industrial uses on the waterfront. Current uses are grandfathered. We can't take it away. We can't kick them out. They've got a constitutional right to continue running their property the way they were zoned originally when they started operating that way. I mean, if we kicked them out, we'd have to pay them for their business as due compensation for taking a private property. But we can prohibit future uses like that, and we have. So those uses are prohibited, and that was one of our recommendations that was adopted by the City Council, so that may be somewhat some degree of consolation to know that at least we prohibited the future expansion of those kind of uses. All right, so the next item on the agenda is approval of minutes. Do I hear a motion? And I think we're talking about the March 31st minutes. Do I hear a motion to approve those minutes?
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you. Do I hear a second? Second. Okay, any discussion? No discussion. The minutes, all in favor of approving the minutes, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? Motion carries. The minutes are approved. Next item on the agenda is the public hearing for the 2015 Comprehensive Plan Update. I'd like to open with inviting the Senior Planner for Kenmore, Lori Anderson, to give an overview of these proposed updates.
Thank you, Chair Nugent and Commissioners. I'm going to just give a brief bit of background about the Comprehensive Plan update and then an overview of some of the more substantive changes for the benefit of those here tonight, and hopefully that will help with the public hearing. So as you know, the state has mandated, as with all jurisdictions in King County, that the city's comprehensive plan be updated by June 30 of this year. This is the public hearing on that update and is to obtain citizen input before you consider recommendations on May 5th, which then will go to the City Council, anticipated at a joint meeting on June 1st. So last September, as you know, we started this update process and recognizing that the city has updated a number of elements. We're kind of on a rotating cycle. It's not that we have the document and we set it on the shelf and then we pick it up 8 years later and redo the whole thing. In fact, several of the elements have been comprehensively reviewed, including the Parks, Recreation, and Open Space element, the transportation element, the shoreline element, the surface water element, and some pieces of the land use element in conjunction with the regional business zone project. So when the City Council was considering this project, they directed that substantive amendments be limited to some chapters and components of the plan that had not been looked at in several years. And those were the vision statement, and 3 elements. They're called elements, they're really chapters of the plan: the housing element, the public services element, and the utilities element. So they also endorsed the addition of a few policies, not major work program items, but a few policies about healthy, active living. That's in response to a new state requirement, sustainability, and regional transportation. So all of the elements before you this evening, if there are amendments, the background sections have been updated. And in the book that the background information that the community is looking at, it identifies whether a chapter is or is not being amended. So for example, if you were to look at the surface water element, there's a note that the existing element was just adopted, and so there are no amendments proposed to that element with this set of amendments. I'm going to go over each of the substantively amended chapters and talk a little bit about the components of those. The first one is the vision statement. So the vision statement in the current comprehensive plan was adopted in 2001. As part of our public involvement effort, we conducted a public survey in January after the Planning Commission had taken an initial look at the vision statement and made some recommendations. The Planning Commission took that input from the survey, they combined some comments, they tried to reorganize the phrases in a certain order that made sense with higher priority components toward the top of the statement, although all were important. And the most significant new change was that they identified Kenmore as a vibrant waterfront community. The Planning Commission eliminated the phrase about clear public priorities and utilization of public resources because it's not really a vision for the city, it's more an operational piece, and they added a new statement about arts and culture. The housing element was reviewed with staff from ARCH, a Regional Coalition for Housing, And there was language added about providing services to allow seniors to stay in their homes. They recognize the city's role in providing affordable housing for all income levels in coordination with the county-wide planning policies. That's a framework within which the city must operate, the King County countywide planning policies, and then even beyond that, there's a 4-county, multi-county planning policies that Puget Sound Regional Council has developed. And a significant implementation strategy for the housing element would be future adoption of a housing strategy plan that would identify specific action steps and priorities related to housing. The public services element discusses things like schools, human services, etc. And the information, the background information in this element was reviewed with the North Shore Fire Department, the Kenmore Library, the North Shore School District, and some of the human services providers that didn't have comprehensive website information. The new policies talk about community engagement techniques that encourage a diversity of voices, and an important new implementation measure is to include or to encourage human services providers to give us an update of what services they provide, what the gaps are for residents of Kenmore, and then how those gaps might be filled. Information in the utilities element was reviewed with Puget Sound Energy, Republic Services, who provides trash and recycling services, and the North Shore Utility District, providing water and sewer service. New policies relate to requiring excellent service from as part of franchise agreements when possible, and also policies to increase opportunities for future utility undergrounding and minimizing impacts of personal and cellular service towers on adjacent land uses through careful siting and design. A significant implementation measure addresses new regulations for alternative energy sources such as solar, wind, and thermal. So a suggestion that there be new regulations developed. As for healthy, active living and sustainability, the state law now requires that comprehensive plan land use elements consider planning approaches that increase physical activity. In that context, you think about transportation and land use and how those two things relate. You think about multimodal transportation to encourage people to bicycle or walk to their destination. And the Kenmore Comprehensive Plan already has a wealth of policies that discuss that. So the Planning Commission is recommending, again, just a couple of policies in the plan to support those approaches. Healthy, active living is addressed in for example, the context of the Let's Move campaign, support for that. And there are some very few local food policy recommendations that are a direct outcome of the King County countywide planning policies that address that topic. The sustainability policies, again, if you go through the existing plan and pick out policies related to sustainability, there are a number of them. And so the most significant action in that regard is the idea that the city will develop a sustainability action plan about measures the city could take to citizens, businesses, the administration, and the council could take to support sustainable economic prosperity, social equity, and environmental health. As for regional transportation policy, the transportation element was completely rewritten and updated and approved by the City Council last year. However, the City Council had asked that the Planning Commission consider some just 3 additional policies. One of them has to do with water-based transportation, either a ferry or water taxi. There's been a policy, and is now in the existing plan, a policy about ferry service to Kenmore, and then also a more focused interest in high-capacity transit, preferably rail, along SR 522. So that's, again, an overview of the most substantive changes. Many of the elements, the background information has been updated. There has been some amendments where things were inconsistent or out of date, and those changes, for the benefit of the audience, are in yellow and underlined in the document.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Mm-hmm. So I've got a sign-in sheet for those who want to comment on these proposed revisions to the comp plan and these updates. And I'm seeing 3 names. but I see a lot more than 3 people here. So if anybody hasn't signed in, I'll give this to the staff, and you can still sign in and render comment if anybody wants to step forward and do that. Not seeing any movement there, but so I'll just go with these 3 names. The first on the list is Mick Osgood.
No, I didn't want to speak. I just was here.
All right, no problem, Mick.
Come on, Nick.
Don't feel pressured, Mick. Okay, you're welcome to sit and listen. Patrick's got another swing at it here, I see, so he'll get his chance. Before Patrick is Elizabeth Mooney. So, Patrick.
She's communing with the telephone.
All right. Step on forward, Patrick.
All right. Patrick O'Brien, 6330 Northeast 181st Street. So look at this lovely cell tower here. That is the result of poor planning and renewing a contract with the local cell utility. Okay, that you can affect. That is an eyesore. There are several others in the plain public view that you can affect.
Pat.
Okay, sorry.
I can hear you really well.
Oh. Well, I don't need this then.
No, actually, you don't.
Well, there we go.
There you go.
How's that?
That's great. Thanks.
All right. All right. So they were talking about such things as public utilities. I've thought for a long time, at some point, the goal to the future is water. We're going to be sending that to California. We're going to make a lot of money on it, but we have to be prepared. So where the Brightwater property is, that we're given for our capitulations, help, whatever, in that project, we could put water towers there. We could put water towers on any wetland up on Finn Hill. There was several properties that I was trying to sell, and you couldn't do anything with them because of city code, heron habitat, whatever. But what you could do is put water towers on them. I know the city of Bothell put 2 on top of the hill right by the Army radio thing, and they're going great guns there. So look at water towers, and on top of the water towers, put a cell phone tower. You know, get it out of the way. Get it out of the public preview downtown. Ridiculous. Okay, we talk frequently out of both sides of our mouth about, you know, quality of life, environment. And then we have, okay, which you rightfully pointed out, is that they've got an established use for industrial there. But what you haven't told me is how much more, since the support of the 520 project, 520 Bridge project, how much more concrete and asphalt they're planning, they're using that plant more now than they ever did before. And now it opens up at 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, and people here call 911. We can't get a response from the city because the enforcement people aren't up at 3 and 4 in the morning, and then you don't hear back from them. So there's an established noise ordinance and hours of operation ordinance not being followed by the city and not being enforced by the city. I'd like to see that change. The vision statement, let's look at 181st. We're conflicted. We built the library. At the time we built the library, we said, why would you put that across from your city center? You're just going to have a problem with pedestrian traffic trying to cross that. In the meantime, they realigned this road, and now all the people that want to get around 522 traffic cut through in here, and at 5 in the morning, and after 3:30, this road is just chock full of traffic that isn't interlocal Kenmore traffic. So, gee, we want to walk across the street to the library, and boy, we had to put in a new stop sign. Why? Because the pedestrians couldn't get across it. So we always are working at cross purposes of what we're trying to do.
Okay. Great.
Am I done?
Yeah, I'm afraid you are.
Oh, I have so much more.
But we have future meetings, Pat, so there you go. You'll have another shot down the road. The next name is Elizabeth Mooney. If you want to step again forward, Elizabeth.
Elizabeth Mooney, 5934 Northeast 201st Street. Just in general, because I cannot pretend to know all the details and all the work that you've been putting into it. I know from the Citizens Advisory Committee on the Shoreline that it's complicated, but I know that the purpose of the comprehensive plan is to address the community's vision for our city. And not to lay blame but to you, but I think what is happening, and if you look back and have the council direct staff to do a statistical study of the number of variances, the numbers of wetland square footages that have been reduced, the number of trees that have been cut down, one of the big questions is, has our staff been enforcing the laws that our council directed them to do? That might be something that I need to follow up with the council. I mean, I know you suggested that. But I know I've heard the word industrial jobs, and the city's future, if it doesn't de-emphasize industrial now with this new comprehensive plan, my fear is that the people who are the big wigs at the wherever are going to overtake our health, our clean air, our water, just because we need the money. Another concern that I have, and I've been to the Joint Transportation Committee here that was 2 summers ago. In here, in one of your yellow spots, it talks about Bothell. And just as an example, I know that the mayor of Lake Forest Park, and we've been working with Bothell. We're right in between. We're the drive-by city. I heard that back when Steve Anderson was here. I don't want us to be the drive-by city that the state takes advantage of because we're on the tip of Lake Washington and we've got barges that are low. I mean, they're 1960s. We are not being treated right. I went to D.C. and talked to Maria Cantwell. The citizens of Kenmore deserve to be protected. She agreed with that, but somebody's taken advantage of where we were and how to build bridges, and it, I hope, will stop with your work if you craft some of these important phrases like working with Bothell. I don't want to work with Bothell if it's going to hurt our air and our water anymore. They've already benefited. I was at a Microsoft meeting about 5 years ago with Bastyr. Our city manager wasn't there, our city mayor wasn't there. They were talking about the best and brightest being able to get from Seattle to Redmond. Kenmore was not included in what's best for Kenmore citizens. So, good luck.
Thanks, Elizabeth. All right, I think that wraps up. It certainly wraps up all those who've signed in, but again, if anybody else wants to step forward, you're welcome to, because we've got a little more time on our schedule than expected. So feel free.
So my name is Jeff Varden. I live at 7822 Northeast 199th Street,
Okay.
which is the Winfield Meadows neighborhood. For my family, I moved here about 6 years ago from South Bothell because I was looking at communities that had great schools, had low crime rates. I have an 8 and 11-year-old, and was looking at the future plan of Kenmore and the whole Lake Point project and the river that came into it, and thought what a great and upcoming city that Kenmore could be. I thought that the economic vitality could be really come to fruition with some kind of development of the waterfront for commerce, for people to walk, to enjoy kind of the city and clean air and do water recreation and stuff like that. And that's just kind of what drove my family here. Been waiting. Found out that certain, obviously when the economy kind of crashed, certain plans of purchasing land and stuff fell through and things like that. But as things are picking up, I see a little bit of progress that's being made. But would really just encourage that we get rid of the industrial waterfront area and that we make it something that draws attention to people outside of Kenmore, that when they're thinking on a Friday night of where should we go get ice cream and where should we go to dinner and where should we go, they think Kenmore. Kenmore has a beautiful waterfront. They've got, a nice promenade. They've got, a trail we can ride our bike to and go get something to eat. That was kind of the vision I was kind of thinking of when I read the comprehensive plan about 10 years ago, when I started kind of looking at different cities to move to. And we're just kind of hoping that that would come to fruition, and I know you guys all have a stake in that, and you have a part, and I hope you just do what's best for the citizens of Kenmore, and hopefully you can work hard to make something like that come true. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Is it Jeff?
Yeah, Jeff.
Thanks, Jeff.
Pardon. Yeah,
You bet. All right. Anybody else? Please, feel free. Jeff, just for the record, you've got a lot of people who agree with that whole line of
On the
thinking,
fly.
both in this
This is
body
on
and
the fly. Janet Hayes, 6303 Northeast 181st, Kenmore.
Go ahead.
When I moved here in 2004, well, I lived up on Arrowhead previous to that. We bought there in 1998. We had always heard about the Lake Point project. One of the reasons we bought in Kenmore was because we were sold on a Lake Point project. When I retired in 2007, I started investigating because I was seeing such degradation occurring on the Lake Point property. The Planning Commission, Doug in particular, and Elizabeth know that part of the story well. I was at a lot of their Planning Commission meetings talking about it. We actually won a Clean Water Act suit there and thought that there would be no more problem. Well, now, instead of waterfront construction, we have the 520 bridge. Waterfront construction rented on a month-to-month basis from Gary Sargent. Now we have Kiewit, and they are paying $1 million a year in rent. The Lake Point project did not end because of the economy. That is not where it ended at all. It ended because of the costs to clean it up. To have a Lake Point project were something that Mr. Sargent did not want to take on. We continue to believe and hope that there will be one. Mayor Baker says there's a buyer, a developer that wants to come in. The costs are extraordinary. We even had Jerry Paulette stand up and say, but I've been in Gary Sargent's office. I've seen the picture on the wall of the Lake Point project. Maybe we all have, but if you've noticed, that picture was done years ago. It is so faded you can't even see the lines. We see no improvement on anything on that property that's working towards making it something cleaner, something nicer. It's got old roofing stacked on the evergreen topsoil side. If you ever go there to buy topsoil, do not. They've ground up roofing and put in that topsoil until they were caught. And people bought it as garden soil. The other thing, the cement plant, and I don't know if you can help this in any way, their intensity of use has changed 100-fold. They have at least 175 cement and asphalt trucks leave there a day, every day. They have 2 barges a day come in with sand and gravel for those companies. There used to be 2 a week. Now, it might have been grandfathered in under one use, like that use, but the use has changed. And if anybody can help, you guys can give the message, or the council. You've got bigger hammers than I do, and I appreciate it.
All right.
But it has to be done. It's just going to get worse. Oh, and the family that owned the property, Gary Sargent's in-laws, they've passed away, but Elizabeth and I have had conversations with Chet Page, Jane Hallett Page's wife, husband, and he said, we like it industrial. We don't have to make a change. We don't have to test but twice a year, just groundwater, and we like the $1 million a year we're getting. And that doesn't help our vision.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Janet. Sure thing. All right, I think that wraps up everybody who wants to step forward, but again, if somebody's changed their mind, you're welcome to do so. Going once, twice, done. All right, that wraps up the public hearing. Thanks everybody for your comments. So we're going to meet again on May 5th. We're going to talk about the comments rendered tonight. We did have a joint session with the City Council last night. They rendered comment on these proposed changes. We do have a little time on our schedule, it being 7:35. So I'm going to ask staff and my colleagues here on the commission if it makes sense for us to talk about at least the council's comments tonight, or if we should set that over to May 5th as well.
Thank you, Planning Commission. Being as the meeting was only last night, and Laurie and I have actually been at a planning conference today, we've not had chance to bring forward any revisions to the language. So we were anticipating bringing that language forward on May 5th, but if the Commission has any direction based on the comments they heard from Council that they would like us to consider, we can certainly do that.
Okay, I understand. That was mentioned last night. Does anybody want to raise anything, any comments with respect to the Council's comments last night, or give direction, proposed direction for the staff? Deborah?
Well, I wasn't sure.
There you go.
Is it up? Yeah. Which parts of the revised language are you thinking of based on last night? Because I wasn't sure.
What I heard was several things perhaps to consider for the vision statement. There was a comment about perhaps including the word fun.
Right.
Somewhere in the vision statement, there was discussion about perhaps moving the bullet about volunteerism further up the list, and maybe including something about co-creators. There was a question about whether changing the word high-density housing to multifamily was something else that was raised.
And then there was lifestyles instead of citizenry.
There was lifestyles instead of citizenry. So it wasn't really so much, I would say, substantive changes. It was more clarification or reordering, or perhaps inserting some words to clarify. But I apologize that we haven't had chance
I kind of sprung it on you,
to do that since last night.
Deborah?
So, it sounds like you got all of those. The one thing I don't know whether people were wanting is just the, healthy residence, and that would get us away from the word lifestyle and the citizenry problem. And that just might be a simpler way of describing it. But
People want to talk about that? So what we're getting at is there's a line in the vision statement. Do you have a copy of that? Thank you.
yeah, the second bullet.
Thanks. Which bullet point is it?
The second one.
No, we're looking for, there's one where it says healthy citizenry.
Yeah, it's the second bullet. Supports an active, healthy
Oh.
citizenry with well-maintained parks.
I must have the old draft. That would do it.
Pre-prioritized list.
Okay.
Have a copy?
I just have it on my... The version that they have is the second draft.
There we go. This is a different version. So do we want to take this up now, or do we want to wait till May 5th?
Or we can wait till the 5th.
Because we're all sort of
Yeah, that's fine.
struggling to
Either
find
way.
the page. But
You ask our opinion?
indifferent? May 5th? May 5th?
I'm good with the 5th, yeah. We can
That's
go ahead.
fine.
Thanks, Deborah. All right. Well, it looks like we'll set it over to May 5th, along with the other items from tonight's comments. Mark, did you want to?
Yeah, was there any, they talked a lot about the fate of the mobile home parks. Is that something that would come back in this, or do you think that's something that the council will
I think
address going forward? That was obviously a big, policy discussion last night
Right.
amongst the council members.
I didn't really hear any changes that would be made to the housing element. What I did hear is some of those questions, whether it's addressing, mobile homes, what happens if there's a proposal for redevelopment of a property that has mobile homes, would perhaps be policies that would be addressed in a housing strategy. I did hear that council were interested in perhaps putting that work program item sooner rather than later. So again, that might be something the council would want to consider in 2016, and they could certainly do that, and they could certainly assign that to be reviewed by the Planning Commission.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. I'm wondering, did you get the sense they were looking to delegate that or take it up directly themselves?
They could go either way, but I think, they might recommend delegating that to you to bring forward a recommendation.
Yeah. Well, if they did, it wouldn't be till next year then.
Right.
Because we had a full docket this year.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks for that. Anybody else? All right. Well, we've satisfied tonight's agenda. Is there any new business? None? There being no new business, I hereby adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everyone.